Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's presentation on Asme supporting the global pipeline community. My name is Juno, and I'm part of the standards department here at Asme.
I'm Michael Frediani, working in the engineering services department.
And I'm Drew Lentz. I'm part of our learning and development department.
Moving on, we just have a quick overview of what we're going over today. So first off, we'll start with an introduction to Asme. Then we'll go into codes and standards, certification programs, and then into the learning development. So ASME stands for the American Society of Mechanical Engineers, and we work in conjunction with the global engineering community to develop solutions to real-world challenges facing all people all over our planet. We actively enable inspired collaboration, knowledge sharing, and skills development across all engineering disciplines throughout the world while promoting the vital role of the engineer in society. And ASME's mission statement is to advance engineering for the benefit of all of humanity, and our vision is to be the premier resource for the engineering community globally. And here we just have a couple statistics about ASME. We were first founded in 1880, and up until today, now we have over 90,000 ASME members, which includes students as well as early career engineers. And we have over 135 countries with ASME members, and we also have 350 plus ASME staff, including offices in New York, New Jersey, Texas, Washington, D.C., as well as a couple international locations. And moving on to the bulk of our presentation, we'll be going into ASME codes and standards. So the ASME standards and certification mission is to develop the best, most applicable codes, standards, and conformity assessment programs in the world for the benefits of humanity. This involves the best and the brightest people from all around the world to develop, maintain, and promote the use of these ASME products and services. And just a couple specific standards and certification statistics. We have over 700 standards and certification committees. We have over 550 standards, and we have over 6,000 volunteer members overall, and including 1,000 from which are outside of North America. And we have around 7,000 certified manufacturers in over 75 countries. And just a brief overview of the B31 pipeline codes and standards we'll be going over today. First off, we have B31.4, which is pipeline transportation systems for liquids and slurries. We have B31.8, which is gas transmission and distribution piping systems. We have B31.8S, which is managing system integrity of gas pipelines. We have B31.8G, which is the manual for determining remaining strength of corroded pipelines. And lastly, we have B31Q, which is pipeline personnel qualification. So moving on to B31.4, so the scope of this standard is for piping, transporting products which are predominantly liquid between facilities, plants, and terminals, and within terminals, pumping, regulating, and metering stations. So the latest edition of the standard was published in 2019, and the standards provide requirements for piping transporting liquids and piping transporting aqueous slurries of non-hazardous materials. And these liquids include things such as crude oil, natural gasoline, liquid alcohol, and much more. Moving on to B31.8. So the scope of this standard is for piping, transporting products which are predominantly natural gas between sources and end-use services. So for this standard, it was published a year ago in 2020, and it provides requirements for onshore and offshore pipeline facilities used for the transport of gas, as well as gas gathering pipelines, as well as gas distribution systems. And next we have B31.8S. So this applies to onshore pipeline systems constructed with ferrous materials and also for transport gas. And the principles and processes embodied in integrity management are applicable to all pipeline systems. So the latest edition of this was also in 2020, and the code is non-mandatory, and it's designed to specifically supplement B31.8. And managing the integrity of a gas pipeline system should be the primary goal of every pipeline system operator because it keeps the employees safe as well as the customers as well. And moving on to B31G. So this standard is intended solely for the purpose of providing guidance in the evaluation of metal loss in pressurized pipelines, as well as piping systems. The latest edition of this standard was published in 2017, and it's applicable to all pipelines within the scope of transportation pipeline codes that are part of the overall ASME B31 code for pressure piping. More specifically, this book relates to B31.4 and B31.8. And lastly, we have B31Q, which establishes the requirements for developing and implementing an effective pipeline personnel qualification program. So the latest edition of this standard was actually in 2021, and this book establishes by utilizing a combination of technically based data, accepted industry practices, and consensus-based decisions. And just a quick summary of B31 pipeline codes and standards overall. So these codes and standards cover a variety of methods and usages, and many times the standards reference each other to work effectively and coherently. ASME standards are also ANSI-approved, and they operate under the consensus approval. And overall, they have a global presence. There are a lot of countries that purchase B31 standards and codes. Some of the specific ones are Japan, Canada, United Kingdom, as well as the Netherlands. And now I'll be moving on to the next slides and handing it over to Mike.
Thank you, Jihoon. So I'll be talking about ASME certification and accreditation programs. So what is certification accreditation? This is the recognition of a company's or individual's capability to fulfill the requirements of an ASME standard in order to advance public safety and facilitate international commerce. Underneath this sentence is what's called the ASME single certification mark, which is applied to most of the products that are manufactured in accordance with one of our standards. Here is an overview of the different certification and accreditation programs that ASME runs. I'll be starting from left to working to right. So underneath our product certification programs, we have the Boiler Pressure Vessel Program. This incorporates Section 1 of the Boiler Code, Section 2, 3, 4, 5, 8, 9, 10, 12, and the new 13 all fall underneath the Boiler Pressure Vessel Program. For the Nuclear Component Program, is including of Section 3 and Section 11. Then we also have our RTP, which stands for Reinforced Thermoset Plastics Standard, and BPE, which stands for Bioprocessing Equipment Standard. Next is our quality program certifications. One is the NQA1 program, which is the Nuclear Quality Assurance Program. That is a program for anyone providing services to the nuclear industry outside of the pressure boundary. For nuclear materials, these are organizations that produce material that will be eventually used to build components for nuclear power facilities. And then finally is our new quality program for suppliers standard, which is a more generic, high-level standard regarding quality programs for companies that provide services or manufacturing. Next is our accreditation programs, where we have two of them. The top one listed there is the Authorized Inspection Agency Program. These are the inspection agencies that work with our certified manufacturers to ensure that the standard is being implemented and built to and adhered to. And then additionally is our pressure relief device program, where manufacturers of pressure relief devices can get certified to ensure that they're adhering to the standard as well. Finally is our personal certification programs. The first one is geometric dimensioning tolerancing program for people that do design Next is our QRO quality, qualified resource operators for waste facilities that burn trash and other municipal waste. And then finally is our B31Q program, which is related to the B31 standards Ji-Hoon mentioned earlier. So here's a higher level of the ASME certification overview with the various stakeholders that partake. As Ji-Hoon mentioned, some of these stakeholders actually participate on our standards development committees. So starting on the bottom left are their fabricators, which are manufacturers that manufacture items to some of our standards. Next, as I mentioned, are the authorized inspection agencies who are in those facilities performing inspections, making sure that the standards are being followed during the manufacturing and fabrication process. Up in the top middle is ASME itself, where we make sure to bring all these groups together to develop the codes, accredit those authorized inspection agencies, issue certificates to the companies, and then performing the audits for those companies and possibly any investigations as well. Next are the jurisdictions. These are regulatory authorities that will adopt our standards into their pressure vessel laws and regulations, which then requires users in their jurisdictions to purchase and use ASME vessels within their jurisdiction. They also help ASME in conducting their own joint reviews as well sometimes. And then finally is the National Board, which is a designated organization from ASME that works to train and commission all the authorized inspectors that work for the authorized inspection agencies, and they are the ones that collect data reports for all of the pressure vessels and boilers that are manufactured to the boiler code. And then finally is our newest certification program, quality program for suppliers. There's a few things about this standard that's new and where it's generic quality program standard for manufacturers and suppliers to focus on quality of their products or services. It can be used by industry for any products or services not specifically covered underneath the ASME boiler pressure vessel code. Coming to mind are some of the B31 standards that Ji-Hoon mentioned. All of these could be applicable underneath the QPS program for certification. There's no authorized inspection oversight in this program, and it operates a little bit differently, where in order to maintain the certification in good standing, a company will go through an annual audit, and instead of stamping any kind of final product, there would be a certificate of conformance associated with it at the end of the process or service. And I'll pass it along to Drew from Learning and Development.
Thanks, Mike. So just to give you a little overview of our Learning and Development team, L&D at ASME, we're an accredited provider of training courses and training programs. And our mission is to advance the skills and grow careers of engineering professionals and their teams. A little bit further about that. So what we do is we provide high quality courses that we develop and facilitate. And those courses, talk a little bit more about this in a minute, but they cover a wide range of practical, technical, business, and standards and codes, ASME standards and codes, as Ji-Hoon and Mike mentioned. Our courses are available in both live and on-demand formats. And our courses are taught by and or developed by practicing engineering professionals, many of whom sit on the very code committees that develop the standards that we talked about already. And really what we try to focus our courses on is centering around real world experience, case studies, and making sure that we really focus on application of codes or whatever the topic being taught is. So a little bit about our pillars, about how we define ourselves at Learning and Development. Currently, we offer 143 total courses. That number is ever changing, but our current catalog is comprised of 57 virtual classroom courses. Those are our live courses, and 86 on-demand courses, which you can consume at your own pace. I mentioned we have several instructors. There's 67 currently active instructors that are teaching and or developing courses actively. On the career development side, we have, further than just courses, we have a couple of programs that are specifically targeted at sort of building individuals' careers. So the first being our bolting specialist qualification program that's aligned with the guideline PCC1 from ASME. And the newest member is our Replicate, Adapt, Optimize framework, which is centered around additive manufacturing and is built into a credential program to issue credentials to learners upon completion of the program. And I mentioned before that we are accredited by IASET to issue continuing education units and professional development credits for learners as they complete our courses. Just to give you a sense of some statistics, in 2020, we issued 1,600 learners with those continuing education units, and those 1,600 learners earned a total of 5,000 continuing education units or CEUs that they can put toward their professional engineering license or toward whatever professional development initiative they're involved in. So I spoke about how we have both live and on-demand courses. To break that down a little bit further, our live offerings are the two on the top that you see in blue. That's virtual classroom. This has obviously grown much in popularity since the beginning of the pandemic. These are live courses with instructors, though facilitated as we are now in a virtual environment. We also do in-person training, though that has been on hold since the beginning of COVID-19 and continues to be on hold until we feel we're safe to deliver those courses. On the on-demand side, the two at the bottom, we have our self-study courses. These are courses to be completed completely at your own pace, on your own time. And then our guided study courses, which are also to be completed at your own pace. However, those are augmented with instructor support. So whether that's email exchange, discussion boards, guided assignments, or office hours, there are instructors available to you, though the completion of the course is done still at your own pace. As far as our content goes, we kind of bucket our content into four major areas. We have our code courses. So we talked about how Jihoon mentioned all of our sort of pipeline courses, or pipeline codes, excuse me. And we have many courses that cover all of ASME's standards and codes, or many of ASME's standards and codes. We also have what we call engineering essentials, which are engineering topics, think finite element analysis, fraction mechanics, that aren't necessarily standard or code specific, but are core to applying those codes in many different industries. We have our soft skills courses, so things like project management, product development, engineering management. And finally, we have our emerging technologies, things like additive manufacturing, industrial automation with robotics, even cell manufacturing. We've been developing courses in those areas recently. As far as who we serve, we break our audience down into two areas. We have individual offerings. So those are courses that we have available to anyone in both live and on-demand formats. So you can join an upcoming class that's already been scheduled. And then we also have our teams offering. So this is for companies, groups, universities that are looking to organize sort of a more custom private training for their group, for their team, for their contractors, whoever it may be. A little bit more about our teams offering. So this is our corporate training. As I mentioned, it's a lot of actually the same root content as is hosted for our individuals courses. But when we organize a corporate training event for a team, we work with the client really to try to tailor that content to the client's particular use case or pain point or a specific problem that's trying to be addressed. So it can be a little more personal in that sense, because by design, the group that's being trained are all united around some project or department or company. And then as far as our piping or pipeline courses, we have courses in ASME's B31.3 process piping code, ASME B31.1 power piping code. Jihoon spoke at length about B31.4 and B31.8 in our transport pipelines. We have courses covering those. And we even have courses covering our sort of nuclear specific piping systems. And with that, I will turn it back to Jihoon.
All right, thank you, Drew. And that concludes our presentation. And for the last slide, we just have contact information for us, all the speakers. And yeah, we hope that you guys enjoyed the presentation today and learned greatly from it as well. Thank you for your time.